I'm Jesse Waters, and welcome to this special edition of Waters World, looking back at some of the biggest, craziest, and most controversial moments of 2018. We begin with the biggest scandal of 2018, Robert Mueller and the Russia probe. A year and a half into his investigation, and the special counsel hasn't unearthed any evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. But in the final days of the year, Mueller made some very serious moves involving several key players. Former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn, who pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russian officials, is cooperating on at least 3 investigations. Former Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort entering into a plea deal with Mueller before breaking it. He's awaiting sentencing next year. And Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen sentenced to 3 years in prison for his role in hush money payments to a porn star and a former Playboy model before the 2016 election. But much of the investigation seemed to start with former campaign aide Carter Page. I spoke with him earlier this year about the abuse of power in the FISA court and how he became tangled up in the Russian web. Everybody's talking about Carter Page, they opened up the surveillance because of you, and no one knows who you are, you're this man of mystery. Who is Carter Page?
Well, that's the beauty of it, and that's the way they were able to get so much taken care of, because they had a blank slate, right? They had this fake dossier, and they wanted to, paint a picture on someone, and it's a lot easier to do that against me than, a Russian billionaire who's
so
well known
they've accused
before the
you of being some sort of, Moscow lover and, Putin butt kisser. And they're saying you're going all the way over to Russia and you're trying to cut deals and you're trying to talk to the powers that be. Is that true?
I've been doing deals in Moscow for, a decade and a half. And working there and
you're
actually
trying to make money over there, right?
Well, actually, I'm also a foreign policy scholar, and I've written a lot about Russia. I actually did my PhD on Central Asia, the political economy of Central Asia.
So you know about the country, and you're over there trying to make deals, and you're giving speeches and things like that, and they open up surveillance on you because they think you're somehow doing something illegal and colluding with the Russians.
Well, again, if you have, similar to the Iraq situation back in the early 2000s, if you have fake intelligence and you're able to sell that to Congress and to the American people, then one thing leads to another, and you have a nice little conflict to get.
Okay, so they're now investigating the abuse of the FISA court because we know they presented a dossier there which was salacious and unverified. That's a crime. You're not allowed to do that. And we're also learning now that the Obama White House Chief of Staff, Dennis McDonough, was involved in kind of pushing the investigation forward with the FBI counterintelligence people, and Harry Reid was involved, and he was briefed by the CIA director and then wrote a letter to James Comey urging the opening of the investigation. When you were being surveilled, were you talking to Donald Trump? Were you talking to people in the campaign?
I've never spoken to Donald Trump in my entire life. Right.
That's huge news, because the way that the media spins it, you're some sort of central figure. Did you ever know that you were being surveilled? Did you ever get like a sixth sense saying, wait a second, this is fishy?
Well, there are a lot of people leaking to the news about this.
And that kind of gave you an idea?
That, gave me a pretty significant suspicion.
Did you change your behavior after you sensed you might have been under surveillance?
I've never done anything wrong in Russia for the last 25 years, or 27 years since I first went there.
So you didn't feel like you needed to change anything?
Absolutely.
So they're saying you're talking to Russians at the Republican convention in the summer of 2016. Is that true?
I, said hello to Ambassador Kislyak,
All right, so you said hello to the Russian ambassador. Okay.
Which is the big news story.
Which is not a crime.
Yeah.
Okay. You are under the microscope. Do you feel guilty for being a part of this surveillance that has now led to a special prosecutor?
I feel guilty that I didn't fight back harder when this first started, 45 days before the election, when the fake news stories start coming out and defaming me. And so part of me feels bad that I didn't do more to stand up for my rights.
You've gotten your reputation thrown into the gutter. You have to admit that. And the Trump campaign has tried to disavow you. You understand that. Naturally. I would too if I were them. This entire escapade has embarrassed the country. Do you feel at all guilty for giving these enemies of the president this kind of ammunition to use against him?
No, again, I feel guilty that I did not fight back to get the truth out there earlier.
About the conspiracy against the president and Trump Jr.'s infamous Trump Tower. To the Washington Post, CNN, New York Times.
You're right. We always said this. I mean, it is so ridiculous that let it go, though. At this point, let it go.
Give nothing to hide.
Nothing. The real problem that I've had with it is, other than millions in legal fees and lots of time wasted and being smeared throughout the media for years, that at least they uncovered this. Because what if they wouldn't have? What if they would have just let it go? At this point, I mean, there is a little bit of sweet revenge in it for me and certainly probably the family, in the sense that if they wouldn't have done this, this stuff would be going on.
You're right.
This would be going on at the highest levels of government. They'd be continuing to do it to my father, trying to undermine his actions. Imagine how effective he can be given the year he's had without this cloud over his head. So I want them to come to a conclusion already, because you've been looking for 2 years. You've come up with nothing other than their own nefarious actions and their own collusions. They've come up with nothing. Needed it to be
so
true.
much like your dad. I took a meeting.
But they needed it to be true, because they staked their entire credibility, their whole narrative. That was, now we can keep going. Now we can keep on the heat, because they all knew what was going on.
So what does this do to the media's credibility, which wasn't high to begin with? Now, after this whole hoax exposed, what does it do?
Listen, I just think it gets rid of the notion there's any objectivity left. And I can say that for both sides, but there's no
except Waters' World.
Obviously, well, that's, you're the exception.
Fair and balanced.
There is none anymore. And as long as people understand that when they're watching, that it's really news entertainment. That's why you're saying, to fill a 24-hour news cycle, you have to do this. People are giving their opinions. They're no longer relaying news. They're relaying news with their preferred choice of spin. And that's a shame.
Behind bars and back. Former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos released from federal prison earlier this month, serving 12 of his 14-day prison sentence as part of his guilty plea with Robert Mueller. Papadopoulos has had his world turned upside down by the Russia investigation and recently entered Waters' World to talk about it. When you were involved with the Trump campaign back in the summer of 2016, you were invited to go to Europe. And this is when it all started. Am I wrong? Who invited you over there and why?
So when I was officially part of the campaign, I was living in London actually at the time. So I was working for this group called the London Center for International Law Practice, which now we find out is some sort of obscure
So a Western intelligence front group you believe you were working for, unbeknownst to you at the time.
Yeah.
What was the first meeting that set this thing in motion?
So I'm officially a part of the campaign, I guess, around March 11. And then I tell this group, look, I'm leaving London. I'm going to go back to the U.S. because I'm joining Trump. But for some reason, they wanted to bring me to Rome with them on some business trip to this university. I had no idea what it really was. It's called Link Campus.
Okay.
So then after I look into this school, after I've had time this past year to look into these places I was going back and forth to, it's some sort of training school for Western spies.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they bring you over to Rome at some point, and you believe you were involved with another Western intelligence front group.
Yeah.
There, and you had no idea. So then what happened?
So then, all of a sudden, I randomly am introduced to this person named Joseph Mifsud.
Okay, Joseph Mifsud.
That's right.
And who is that?
Joseph Mifsud is the infamous professor who is allegedly this super Russian spy who had the one piece of information that no one else on this planet had about Clinton's emails.
Okay, so you meet with this guy, Mifsud. And what was the reason for the meeting? Who set the meeting up?
So that's the key point. The point is that the London Center for International Law Practice set up this meeting between Joseph Mifsud and I.
So what exactly did he say about Hillary's emails to you?
He's like, I have information that the Russians have thousands of Hillary Clinton's emails. I never heard the word DNC. I never heard the word Podesta. I never heard anything like that.
So when he told you that Russians had thousands of Hillary's emails, what did you do next? Did you tell anybody?
So, I've been asked this question a million times, and what I can say is...
Well, I asked it the best.
You do ask it the best, and that's why I'm going to give you the best answer. And the answer is that I have absolutely no recollection of telling anyone on the Trump campaign about this information.
Okay.
What I did do...
What did you do?
...was I gossiped about it with the Greek foreign minister, just like diplomats do. I'm not a diplomat, of course, but, people in policy circles just gossip about rumors.
So you told the Greek, then what?
Yeah, and then I told the Australian High Commissioner Alexander Downer the same information.
Okay, so you're what? You're at a social event and you run into Alexander Downer, who at the time? The Australian what?
Yeah, so let's backtrack a second, because there's this misunderstanding that I just run into this person randomly. And
you believe you were set up again?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so you were manipulated into a meeting with Alexander Downer, who was a Australian diplomat.
Yeah, so
and a Clinton donor.
Yeah, so Alexander Downer is no random diplomat. This was the head of the equivalent of the CIA of Australia for around 17 years.
Okay.
He was the foreign minister, and now he was the top diplomat in London of Australia.
So he meets, and then what happens?
Yeah, so then what happens is he basically starts becoming very belligerent, talking to me, saying that Trump is a horrible person. All your ideas in the Middle East, my personal ideas, because that was my business, was the energy business in Israel. Mm-hmm. He's like, they're a threat to British interests. And I have absolutely no memory whatsoever of ever talking about emails with this person.
So you say you never spoke to him about emails, but Downer, went to who? The FBI, and said, this gentleman who's working for the Trump campaign, George Papadopoulos, told me about Hillary's emails and some Russia connection. Is that what you believe happened?
That's, I guess, what the media is saying. All I know is I told the FBI directly to them that I felt that he was recording my meeting with them.
You went to the FBI after you met with this Australian diplomat.
During my discussions with the FBI, I told them that I think this guy was recording a conversation.
Very interesting.
The meeting was very weird. I had, let's say, 4 or 5 very strange meetings throughout the campaign that left an indelible mark on my memory, and this was one of those.
So now, all right, so then you've gotten now yourself involved in this huge situation, this international espionage situation. Were you ever spied upon, or did your phones, were they tapped? Were your emails looked into? Do you have any idea?
All I can say that I know that's public now is that I had Stephen Halper, which was this Cambridge professor who was working on behalf of British intelligence, luring me to London so that the British would spy on me, and it's all linked into the UK.
So then it's Stefan Halper, who people believe is a CIA agent. Is that what the word on the street is?
The word on the street is...
Because he was paid by the Obama administration a pretty nice sum of cash.
The word on the street is that this guy was like a dual agent of the MI6 and the CIA.
Okay, so then he brings you back to London at another point, and you believe you were surveilled there.
Well, I was.
You were?
Yeah, I was. I mean, it's a public record.
So then you had to testify in front of Robert Mueller, and I guess he caught you up in some sort of perjury trap. I know that's complicated. I've heard you say what happened there. You know, perjury traps, they're easy to walk into, and I guess maybe you weren't completely honest, but I understand what happened there. He got you, and you're going to serve some time now. You've been sentenced to how long?
To 14 days.
To 14 days. What is your theory about what happened in 30 seconds?
I think I was set up by Western intelligence. I think most of these meetings that I had encountered with were all orchestrated. I don't know by who, but certainly we now have evidence at least one of these meetings was orchestrated by Western intelligence, and that was Stefan Halper.
For the purpose of what?
For the purpose of spying on me, probably for my business ties to Israel I had a very prominent role in, and secondly to try and probably sabotage the Trump campaign through me.
Okay. Still ahead, goat yoga. Goat yoga. It's really a trend, and I tried it. But first, Greg Gutfeld and some of the best Trump tweets of 2018. Huckabee Sanders, I always had a rule. If a restaurant's dirty on the outside, it's dirty on the inside.
It is one of the best because it's specifics. Filthy canopies. That should be the name of a boat.
Filthy canopies. You know, he was a restaurateur, and he's got all these famous places all over the country.
Yeah.
He does take pride in the cleanliness and the display and the presentation of a restaurant. And nothing is worse than calling a restaurant filthy.
It's also memorable. People, when they think of the restaurant as dirty, they can't get that out of their head.
Yeah, because you're a very picky eater. You'd never go to the Red Hen.
I eat nothing but raw pigeon.
It's disgusting. I punched a pigeon once. Didn't eat it, though. All right, Greg, read one of your favorite Trump tweets from this year.
While Washington, Michigan was a big success, Washington, D.C. just didn't work. Everyone's talking about the fact that the White House Correspondents' Dinner was a very big, boring bust. The so-called comedian really bombed. Greg Gutfeld should host next year. At Pete Hegson.
Wait, I wonder why you picked that tweet.
I don't know. You know, the thing is, it's really weird to wake up in the morning and have a lot of people going, hey, did you look on Twitter?
Yeah,
and I
your
checked
phone blows up.
Yeah, and I go, oh, that's good. But, you know, I was very touched, and I think he's right, but I don't know if I do the gig.
Why not?
You know what? You never leave the gig better off than you were before.
Yeah,
you know
what
I mean? It just doesn't help.
It doesn't help, and your jokes probably would go over all of their heads.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Your humor is a little too highbrow for this week. All right, one of my other favorites from this year. Here's this: crazy Joe Biden's trying to act like a tough guy. Actually, he is weak, both mentally and physically, and yet he threatens me for the second time with physical assault. He doesn't know me, but he would go down fast and hard, crying all the way. Don't threaten people, Joe. What a tough guy.
He is a natural at this. This is an art form. Don't threaten people, Joe. Should be a T-shirt. He's fantastic.
Yeah, like yours.
Good at this. I know.
You should make him one. I like that he's going to go down fast and hard, like Trump's been training those two guys. All right, go ahead. What's your next one?
My next one. The media are good news fire extinguishers. At Greg Gutfeld, the five.
I actually agree with that one. That was a very good line, and you just said that a couple days ago.
Yes, I did, and he quoted me, so I thought I'd do this. This is trying to make it all about me and the Greg Gutfeld show, which will be on in less than 90 minutes.
I finally met someone more shameless than myself.
Yes,
wow.
It's true, and we're both here at the same table. A double dose of shamelessness.
Okay, here we go. Next one. This is the last one for me. Alec Baldwin, who's actually, he calls him Alex, whose dying mediocre career was saved by his impersonation of me on SNL, now says playing DGT was agony for him. Alex, it was also agony for those who were forced to watch. You were terrible. Bring back Daryl Hammond, much funnier and a far greater talent.
You know what's great about this?
What's that?
The mistake he makes is on purpose. Alex Baldwin.
You think that was not a typo?
Yeah, it was on purpose. It was just another little dig. Like, I don't even know the guy's name.
Yeah.
It's Alex. Alec. Who doesn't matter. He's washed up.
That's right. Like Max Gutfeld.
Yes, exactly.
Hell of a guy.
There might be one of those.
Probably. What's your last one here?
Let's see. The Gutfeld Monologues is the greatest book ever written, with the exception of The Art of the Deal, which is also a great gift for all the ages. For all ages.
Wait a second.
Yeah, it hasn't happened. That tweet has not happened.
That was a fake tweet.
I just made that up. It's fake tweet. I made up a tweet.
You're perpetuating fake news on Waters World.
I'm planting the thought in the president's head to tweet this, and then my book sales will skyrocket.
But you want a link in the tweet? That's
yes,
your
I want to. Yes,
gotta have a link.
I gotta beat Janine, and I gotta beat Jarrett. Greg, Jarrett, and Janine.
Listen, as long as everybody sells 1, 2, 3, we're all fine. Coming up, one of my favorite interviews of 2018, the 30-year-old evicted from his own parents' house. Don't go anywhere.
During the Ram Big Finish event, there's no better time to get a great deal on the trucks with best-in-class towing.
You make it feel like Christmas.
And the all-new Ram 1500, 2019 Motor Trend Truck of the Year. Hurry in before